game begin.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius.
I am your father.
You like Huey Lewis on the news?
Yes. And you're not sure about this, are you?
You're gonna die, clown!
What's the most you ever lost on a coin toss?
Sir?
The most you ever lost on a coin toss. Call it.
Whose motorcycle is this?
It's a chopper, baby.
Whose chopper is this?
Zed's.
Who's Zed?
Zed's dead, baby.
Bring out today!
This is a tasty burger.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
Welcome to the fucking show.
Hello, welcome back to See What Sticks, a podcast about everything and nothing. I'm Russell.
And I'm Ben.
And we are back for another week. And so, Ben, we're going to start off the podcast. Wait, your call. Do you want me to start off with my rant or news?
Do a rant. Let's hit it hard.
Okay, so I'm going to start off the podcast with this rant. It has come to my attention recently that I spend a lot of time on social media. Not just creating gag posters for the episodes of the podcast, but also on my own social media things that aren't See What Sticks. And I looked at my usage for like how long you're on certain apps, and it's not good. It's like 46 minutes a day is spent on Instagram. I don't really use Twitter, so it's like 1 minute a day. Even though the podcast does have a Twitter, I actually have a thing that I can link all my other posts to Twitter. If you notice, all the Twitter posts are like somewhere else as well. That's why. And then YouTube is like 2 hours a day. So that's technically 3 hours a day that I am wasting literally doing nothing. Like that kind of research, I'm not gaining any knowledge from. I'm not becoming a smarter person or a better person because of all of my time on social media. So I think I'm going to take a little social media diet.
Okay. Yeah, you're getting rid of the mental junk food.
You're right. That's probably the best way to put it. Mental junk food. I am getting rid of it. It has come to my attention how much it like eats me alive to have it. Like I cannot get through an hour-long episode of something or a movie if I'm just left up to my own devices. So I'm at home, not at a theater or someone else's place. But if I'm just home, I can't get through like an entire like theatrical piece without checking my phone, which is bad. That's like the sign of an unhealthy habit or like a mild addiction to something. And I think I just somehow hit my own end today with it.
Well, it's good that you're self-aware about it.
Yeah, just a bit. I mean, I wasn't, and then it kind of like hit me, and then I was like, damn, I am on social media a lot. And it's like useful for marketing this show, and it's useful for other things, but apart from the professional side of it, I'm not really gaining anything, and I don't think anyone around me is really gaining much from those kind of posts. So I don't know what the right plan of action is to take if you're feeling this.
Well, I guess, man, you hop off until you hop off long enough, you force yourself not to open those apps. Hell, you might just delete those apps.
Yeah.
And only do sort of posting, like for the show, post it from your laptop or your desktop, whatever you might have. But just like kind of limit yourself to just that, like, that use of social media, and then just delete all the rest of the apps off your phone. You know, do the cold turkey, get away from it approach.
That might be the move right now, honestly, just because it's so much. I don't think I would delete anything personally, just because all of those different profiles have pictures and other things I would like to save. And Facebook, there's a lot of relatives I have on there that I wouldn't want to delete because it'd be so hard to find everyone again. But yeah, I think that's a good call, deleting stuff. I think the only one I would ever keep through doing this would be Snapchat, because it's not really a social media in the same way. It's just like another form of texting people.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I can go like a day or so without texting someone or doing that. Like, if I'm distracted, like, if I'm hanging out with friends, if I'm doing something for work, or I'm, like, with my girlfriend, yeah, I can totally be fine not looking at my phone. But if it's just me sitting on, like, the sofa or just kind of, like, hanging out, I'm on it. Like, I'm glued to it.
Yeah, I actually have not checked my usage hours. I know I don't do nearly that much. I spend a lot of time on Twitter just scrolling through and reading bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of time on Reddit, though. Just scrolling through and reading bullshit again.
Really? Reddit, I kind of stopped being into, like, somehow organically, probably last year when I was still at Purdue. I don't know what happened. I think I just got busy, so Reddit was the one that I cut out first, and I haven't been back for many things. I mean, besides like a Game of Thrones forum or two. But apart from that, I really haven't been on. And this is going to be hypocritical for me to say this, but it's like, that's one of those like, damn, I should get back on that. But with this social media diet cleanse thing, that's the wrong thing to say.
Yeah, you can't give in to just one, or else it's just going to be you're going to be falling right back into the traps of all the rest of them.
Yeah, I really would be, and you're right. So that was my little rant for the beginning of this episode, is me being fed up with social media. And I've been playing with my hair the entire time because it's officially long.
It is. It's getting, those locks are getting extended.
They are. If I comb it down the front, this is the weekly Russell's hair update. It's almost past my nose.
That's a Dave Grohl look right there.
It is a Dave Grohl look. That's kind of what my hair is like. I'm waiting for it to do the full Jon Snow. I'm probably 3 weeks away from a full Jon Snow, which is the goal.
You'll be right on time for the premiere.
Oh, if you think I'm not wearing a fur coat to watch all of those episodes, you're goddamn wrong.
King of the North.
You have no idea. But yeah, no, actually Kit Harington cut his hair. I saw him on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and his hair was cut.
Ooh, he doesn't have to deal with that shit anymore.
Yeah, because that was part of his contract, was he wasn't allowed to cut his hair. A lot of people don't know that. That was part of his thing. Or if he was to cut his hair, like, the showrunners would cut it in the right way so it could match continuity.
Right.
Which is wild.
Which I would think, like, with the enormous nature of that show and its popularity, he was probably okay with going by that contract. Like, yeah, I'm not going to fuck up this wild opportunity that I'm working on now.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if someone was like that to me, or was like, you have to be bald, but you're making blank $1 million a year, I'm like, dude, wax my head. I don't care. I mean, actually, I think waxing your head would really hurt.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not comfortable or enjoyable in any way possible, but the skin on the top of your head is pretty tough.
Oh, yeah. You probably know better than I would, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, because I'll take a razor to it every few days, and I mean, it can withstand some beating up.
With your hair, or your shaving of your hair, why don't you use, like, clippers? Like, the ones with, like, you know the little circles or the little buzzers where it has, like, the 3 little circle things?
Like an electric razor?
Yeah.
I prefer a very smooth shave, and nothing is going to get it as smooth as just a razor, like a Gillette or Bic, anything like that. It's just not going to get as smooth as that.
That's true. Have you ever used Nair on your head?
Absolutely not.
What does Nair do?
I couldn't say exactly, but I've heard that using Nair burns.
Oh,
I think it kind of it may people will probably know the answer to this that are listening, and write in. Feel free to chastise me with being wrong, but I think it kind of burns the hair follicle to where it damages it to where it takes that much longer for it to heal itself and then to regrow hair.
Oh. I thought it just made your hair fall out.
I mean, kind of.
Yeah, but it's worse than that.
I think you're supposed to shave and then use Nair. So that you have like an open hair follicle or hair pore.
Oh. You know what? That makes more sense. But, damn, okay. Well, you answered my question.
Yeah, well, I'm probably wrong anyway, so.
No, I feel you, but that sounds right. That's one of those wrong answers that if someone gave me that as, like, something on the news, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's, like, wrong, but sounds right enough that it might be right.
And that's how I've scooted through life.
Exactly. Like, it's
being
a wrong
wrong
answer.
enough, or being wrong, but just sounding right enough.
And then people believe you, and then you go through.
Yep.
But this is what it looks like right now. I know this is bad radio. It's my boy, Jason Momoa.
He looks weird without his long, like, Aquaman / Drago hair.
Yeah, and this is where I'm growing it to.
Okay.
So it's like halfway.
Yeah.
I know he does look so goofy without his long hair. Like, there's pictures of Jason Momoa with, like, really short hair like this. It's wild.
He looks fat.
He does, doesn't he? It's something about the hair.
I'm saying this like, oh yeah, Carl or fucking Jason Momoa looks bad. Like, dude, that dude's gorgeous. And he'd kill me.
Okay.
He would kill me if he ever heard me call him fat.
100%. He is such a smoke show. And people are like, Jason Momoa's not that good looking. Jason Momoa's mad good looking. But that's just like, he's a 10 if we're rating dudes. I don't know how we got there. But do you know what Momo is?
That weird meme thing. Like, I don't know everything about it. I just know what it looks like.
Okay, so I did a little boopity boop research over the weekend. By me, I mean my girlfriend. And I mean that, or I say that because I was at a concert with her, and then that conversation came up before the show, and I'm like, what is that thing? I hate it. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, type in Momo right now on the internet. There's like this weird, creepy sculpture that a girl made that looks kind of like one of the parents in Beetlejuice, sort of, where it's like mouth is like rubbery and extended, and it has no eyelids, but it's like these big cartoon googly eyes on like the bust of a female. It's very weird looking.
Yes.
And it's like this internet meme thing. I don't completely understand what it is, but it's a sculpture. It's not a real person's face. It's Photoshop. That's like an actual tangible thing. But people like say it's going to curse you or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I have not looked into what any of it means. The first time I saw it, I'm like, ugh. And it was pretty repellent to look at, so I really didn't want to dig down that rabbit hole to find out what's going on.
Oh, yeah. We just did a little research before the concert, just because we had nothing better to do and we were just kind of standing around. But yeah, it's weird. And if anyone doesn't know what we're talking about, Google at your own risk. It's not scary. It's just in the uncanny valley. And it's not like gory. It's just like a creepy looking sculpture face thing. But yeah, if anyone knows really what it's about, hit us up. Because I've heard a few things, but yeah. So, movie news?
Movie news.
Okay. Sorry, that was a 13-minute tangent that we had to go down. Let me go back to movie news. This is going to be kind of in no apparent order, but Alan Tudyk is set to voice Iago, the parrot from Aladdin.
Really? That's a good choice.
It is. I like that as well. I wanted it to be like John Mulaney, but we can't have John Mulaney be in everything.
Right. Even though Alan Tudyk is, like, in everything.
Alan Tudyk is in it. For those of you who don't know who Alan Tudyk is, he's Steve the Pirate from Dodgeball.
He's also one of the two titular Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Yep.
He voiced... Well, he's a very prolific voice actor, so you will have heard him in everything.
He's in Rogue One. He plays K2SO, the droid.
He plays the Duke of Wesselton in Frozen.
Yeah.
For all you Disney folks out there. He's in a lot of Disney stuff.
He is in a lot of Disney stuff because he's really good at, like, masking his voice. Like, his voice is pretty normal, but he can do, like, impressions or change his voice enough that he's a really good voice actor. He's not like John Mulaney, who has a very specific kind of voice. Alan Tudyk can change it around enough that he's very, very versatile. But what else? I'm trying to think what else he's in. Oh, he's in the TV show Firefly. He plays Wash, the pilot. And if you guys don't know what that is, that's a show you should definitely watch. It's kind of from the early 2000s, way ahead of its time, but it's really good.
It was one of Fox's shows they cut off too early.
Yes.
They did that a lot back in that day.
They did, and then they made a movie for Firefly, which was called Serenity, and that was also really good. But a sequel to Bohemian Rhapsody is being made.
I don't really know why, I guess. Like, money. That's obviously the big reason why. But it's just like, what are they going to do?
The death of Freddie Mercury?
I guess. But, like, what entertainment value is in that?
Yeah, and his family, I think his mom, I know his mom and his sister are still alive as of, like, 2017. I don't know if his mom is still around. I'm not researching that right now. But his sister's still alive. And maybe his dad's still alive. I have no idea. Why would you want to watch a movie about your son dying?
Right.
I feel like that's in poor taste to do that. And for Bohemian Rhapsody, it's not a perfect film, but it hit a lot of the points that it needed to, and you don't need another.
Unless they're going to, like, go deeper into Freddie Mercury's, like, bisexuality. Oh. Which I heard that they really did not touch on that much in the first one.
Oh, yeah, you haven't seen it yet. No, yeah, because, like, Freddie, he says he was bisexual. I mean, I'm not Freddie Mercury. I don't know. From all accounts before watching the movie, I thought Freddie was gay, not bisexual. So did I. But if that's what he, like, identified as, good for him. But yeah, so I don't know enough about that. And it would be kind of interesting to see that side of Freddie Mercury's life, just like how he dealt with that, because they do touch on it in Bohemian Rhapsody, but they kind of glaze over most of it.
Okay.
There's, like, a few shots and a few other, like, innuendo-y sort of things that you're like, oh, okay. But they don't really ever get into it.
Yeah.
Which would have been interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if Elton John's biopic that's coming out, Rocket Man, I'm wondering if they're going to touch on his homosexuality a little bit more. And
I feel like they might.
Trailer, it looks like they are going to.
Yeah, the one thing I want them to touch on, just because I am the way I am, touch on his epilepsy. He's an epileptic. I'm an epileptic. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I think it'd be cool if they just mentioned it once as a thing. Maybe,
yeah. It's hard to... I don't know if it's ever affected or had, like, any sort of big effect on, like, a live show that he did or something.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess that kind of will weigh on how much they touch on it in the movie.
And maybe he doesn't want people to know about it. And so they won't put it in a movie. Who knows? But Hugo Weaving is also epileptic.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know who Hugo Weaving is, he played Agent Smith in The Matrix. He's been in a billion things. He played V from V for Vendetta, and he was Elrond in Lord of the Rings. Those are the ones that I think most people...
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Yeah. But yeah, most people did not know he was from V for Vendetta. Also, he's Red Skull in the Marvel Universe. So, other movie news. Rotten Tomatoes may require stricter verification to fight trolls. This is from Screen Rants. So, I don't know if you heard about this, but Rotten Tomatoes is removing certain aspects of the platform to help combat people trolling the platform. But what also that entails is a little bit of a loss of the freedom of speech in the platform. So some people are really upset about it. Other people think it might make the platform better, so on and so forth.
Yeah, a lot of it is coming from review bombs prior to the release of Captain Marvel. A lot of people were writing in saying, "Oh, this movie's going to be terrible," blah blah blah, giving it terrible scores just because it stars Brie Larson and like the main character is a woman.
Yeah,
like, and that's just the dumbest shit. Like, I've yet to see it. I might go see it this weekend. I've heard 2 2 different reviews. I've heard a friend tell me it's really good. I've had a friend tell me it's not worth my time. I'm just gonna go make up my own decision, I guess. But yeah,
we should go watch it and do an episode on it next week.
Sure.
Yeah. See, this is us planning stuff on the podcast. Here's another piece of news. Also, we'll talk about Captain Marvel a little more. We'll probably get onto that next week because I have a few questions about that and like things Brie Larson has said, and people are up in arms about certain things that she said, but not things that other people have said. And I want to know your take on it, but we can go over that more next week, so it's more of like a cohesive thing. Because I know at least one person listening will be thinking about that as we're talking about this. Because there's a few things that are kind of big in the news, but not like bad, just like big things. Also, Star Wars Episode 9 panel for like the Star Wars celebration has been confirmed. Oscar Isaac is on there, and I'm sure a bunch more. And the big news is Star Wars Celebration this year will be in Chicago.
Ooh.
I did not know.
You plan on going to that?
Yeah. I don't know when it is. It says 2019.
I would think it's going to be sometime in the spring I think it is sometime in the spring because they will, if it doesn't get leaked a few days before, the title for Episode 9 will come at the Star Wars Celebration.
From what it looks like in here, it says it's in April.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, you're right about this, right? Also, Captain Marvel had the biggest opening ever, over $400 million for a female-led like action movie.
Yeah.
So
we definitely went against expectations there. Like people were or some of the people that get paid to make these sort of predictions, and also the regular schmucks that don't know what they're talking about, didn't think it was going to do that well. Or the people that get paid said, "Oh yeah, it's going to do fine." They didn't think it was going to do that fine.
Yeah. Which also it makes me really want to see it even more. Not just to add to that hype, but to be like, hey, enough people are seeing it and continuing to see it. It must be solid. So next thing is, this is just the title from Screen Rant. MoviePass losses are higher than previously known. So for those of you who don't know what MoviePass is, I used to be a subscriber to it. It was essentially a subscription service you could pay for. They send you like a literal card, like a debit card basically, and you can swipe into as many movies as you want, as often as you want, and it's a $10 monthly fee. You're thinking to yourself, how is that sustainable? The answer is it's not. That's why the company is up shit creek, and they destroyed a lot of the functionality about the service and everything else. So I actually unsubscribed.
Yeah, I was a subscriber at one point, and this was after they bumped up the monthly fee to like $30, which was still a decent movie, or still a decent deal if you went, multiple times a month to go see movies.
Yeah,
you're already saving. Like if you go see 2 movies, it pays for itself. Depending on where you go see movies at and the ticket prices. I was never actually able to get it to work for me, so I subscribed. Really? I tried it twice. It did not work for me, and I was like, "Well, this is stupid. I'm not paying $30 for this bullshit," and I unsubscribed.
That's very interesting. I'm sorry about that. That actually sucks. Because it was really solid when it worked. It was actually really solid.
It seemed like an awesome idea. It's just like every time I tried to book my ticket, like I was sitting in my car outside of the theater, like half hour from showtime, like I think what it like suggests you do.
Yeah. And
it just kept saying like, "Oh, it's like, sorry, we encountered an error or a problem." And I was like, "Well, this is stupid."
That is really stupid. That really sucks. So hey guys, don't do MoviePass. AMC has one too, and I think Regal Cinemas also have one. I think AMC's is like AMC VIP or AMC something like that.
Yeah.
But I heard that's also really, really solid. So if you're out there and you're looking for that thing, maybe that's your answer. Shazam had a early screening. Reviews are good. But those are people who go to early screening, so that might be kind of a biased sample for that. But that is a thing that exists, and it's out there.
Yeah, apparently through Fandango, and depending on where you're located, if you use Fandango to buy a ticket, you can see the movie 2 weeks early.
Yeah.
Compared to the nationwide release.
That's pretty cool. Another thing, Walt Disney World tickets price increase ahead of the new Guardians of the Galaxy's Edge, Guardians Galaxy's Edge Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I did not know that's what it was called. So Star Wars launch bay is like the picture they have, and it's like a concept picture of a bunch of people in a Millennium Falcon type looking room with like showcases and R2-D2. Yeah, how ridiculous do you think that's going to be?
I think it'd be pretty cool to go to. It seems typical of Disney to raise their prices for their tickets again. Like,
how much are tickets to Disney?
Probably a lot higher than what I think. I think like getting 3-day park hopper tickets for like one person is close to like $300.
Yo, are you for real?
Yeah, it's probably more than that.
Dude, I mean, first, whoa. Second, whoa. Third, Lollapalooza tickets for the music festival in Chicago come out next week. I think that for the 4-day music festival, I think those tickets are like $300. If those are the same price as Disney, one of those two is way overpriced and one is way underpriced.
Yeah, I can't pretend to know what all like goes into Disney's budget for their theme park or theme parks like every day, and how much their ticket sales actually do reflect or give them some sort of profit on that. I just know it is expensive to run that place, obviously.
Well, yeah.
That you have a gigantic fireworks budget every single day. Like every night they have a huge fireworks show, so that's not cheap. So yeah, maybe their ticket prices and increase in prices do properly reflect like what they need to charge. I don't know. It just seems like Disney's probably charging a lot more than what they have to.
Yeah, I feel like
Disney.
I feel like the least they could charge and still make a profit of any kind would probably be like $100, $150, because all those people streaming in, but charging the, let's say in theory $300, they're just making a killing.
Oh yeah,
they're just running the game.
Got to fund them movies.
Oh yeah, yeah, they have to fund movies and all their other escapades. So here's another one. Watchmen pitch meeting for the new Watchmen HBO thing that's happening. The subtitle is Superheroes Without the Fun. So I think it'll take the same basic direction as Zack Snyder's Watchmen will, because I think it's not a remake. I think it's...
Right, it's a pretty big reimagining.
Yeah, so they're doing a lot of different stuff with Watchmen. But I think if you go in the same direction that Alan Moore and Dave Gibbon did, who Alan Moore wrote, Dave Gibbon drew it, the original Watchmen comic, if you just go in that same like vein and really go to that universe and those same themes, it's going to be good. There's a reason Watchmen's on the top 25 best novels of all time.
It's incredibly good.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things it's like where people reread Lord of the Rings every year or reread something. I know I have a bunch of friends that reread Watchmen every year. And it's the same kind of thing where it's so good, and every time you read it, you can get something new out of it. And I think everyone should watch it. The movie's okay. Definitely read the comic. And then there's a graphic comic if you're not into reading comics. That's really solid that I think you can find online.
Yeah. I think the movie gets shit on more than what it deserves.
The movie is almost a 1-to-1 translation of the book, minus two big things near the end, involving how the film ends in the same way. The big event is something different in the two.
Right. I think the movie did it better.
I do too. I tend to agree. And then if you've seen the extended version of the movie, there's this whole sequence with a pirate ship. And it's cartoon. That's also in the comics, but watching the extended version of the movie with that included, you get a really good experience out of it. And I think it's worth a watch. It's like Kingdom of Heaven. If you watch the non-director's cut, not good. The director's cut, very good, because a few big things change. So, if you're wanting to watch Watchmen, try to get the director's cut. It's better. So yeah, those are my big pieces of movie news for this week. Ben, what's the topic?
Tonight, we talk the Bourne identity.
Dun-dun-dun-dun. Well, I'm going to find that music. So, Ben, first initial, not a review, first initial thoughts about doing this series as for the podcast before you watched the first film. Like, what was your thought beforehand?
My first thought was, I don't remember hardly anything from these movies. Because, like, I think I realized after watching the first one again that I had never fully finished the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, we'll get into that. But yeah, like, just when we initially decided to do the Bourne series, or at least the first 3 Bourne movies, before they take a trip down to Jeremy Rennerville.
Yeah, we'll get into that eventually.
Right. But yeah, I could not remember for the life of me more than like the big kind of set pieces from each of these movies.
Definitely. Hey Ben, can you do me a favor?
What's up?
Can you say, "Oh my God, it's Jason Bourne"?
Oh my God, it's Jason Bourne.
And that was our 5 seconds that we can legally have of that. You're welcome. So, I do agree with you. There's a scene with the actor Clive Owen in this movie. In my mind, that's where the film ended. Before I rewatched it, because when I had rewatched these a couple years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I had watched them because they were all on TV. And for some reason, I thought the first one ended at that scene, which we will talk about. We'll break down the movie. And that's not spoiler for anything yet. Which this will be full spoiler breakdown. But I thought that's where this movie ended. And it ends in a much different place than I remember that. It ends very differently, and it's also directed by someone different than the other films.
Yes.
Let me pull up some details of names for you, because I actually went out, guys, and bought this. I bought these movies. And I'll tell you how I feel about that financial decision when we're done talking. So this is by Doug Liman, who directed this. It was 2002, and this one's only... It says it's PG-13 on my iTunes page for it. I thought this was rated R.
I believe all of them are PG-13.
Oh, well, I had no idea. This movie feels like it should be rated R. And I think we can get into that a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, I think they probably pushed it to the edge. At the time, also 2002 when this was filmed.
Yeah. So, Ben, what's the movie about? Like a quick 2-sentence plot synopsis before we start breaking it down.
Okay, so Matt Damon wakes up or is found floating in the middle of the ocean or the Mediterranean Sea by a fishing boat. When he comes to, he doesn't know who he is. All he knows is that he's able to do a tremendous amount of things compared to your normal average Joe. Like, he's speaking multiple languages. He's tying ship knots that, no person in the general public would be able to do. He finds out that he knows, martial arts, all this good stuff. So the movie is about him going through trying to find out who he is while being pursued by CIA operatives for some reason.
Yes. That's actually a really good synopsis. Also, there's a scene where he ties a hitch knot. That's not how you tie that. He ties it backwards in the movie. Whoever taught him how to tie it in the movie taught him backwards. There's an easier way to do it.
This whole movie has just been sunk.
It's a charade. I know. For those of you who don't know, I used to sail a bunch. But yeah, no, he ties it backwards. And when I was taught to do that in lower level and really high level sailing, you can do it with one hand. He does it with two hands and kind of backwards. I'm like, that's weird that whoever taught him on set or how he learned was that way. Which
that's the knot that the CIA doesn't want you to know about. Russell.
It is. If I told you guys the knot, it would be one of those memes where it's the SWAT team breaking down the doors like, we got him. They don't want you to know. and I can't say. I've signed an NDA with U.S. Sailing to not say anything. But yes, Ben, that was a good plot synopsis. So, yeah, this movie is an action adventure according to iTunes, and I don't think it becomes either an action movie or an adventure movie till at least 45 minutes in.
I would qualify this more as just a thriller.
Yeah.
Like a light thriller.
Yeah, it is a light thriller because the first 25 minutes to 30 minutes of this movie, you have no idea what's going on. It literally, there is no context for anything that is happening in this film until the end of the film, because there's an African warlord type character in this that has no introduction, that gets killed with no reason, and then you learn in sloppy exposition near the end why that happened. And is that just me, or did none of that make sense to you?
I think some of it was meant to be hidden and not make sense by design, but the stuff with the African warlord, it did feel like, okay, you can let us in a little bit more than what you are.
Yeah.
And it just kept like, those scenes just felt so out of place and kind of just like, wait, what? And it kind of brings the narrative of Jason Bourne and his journey to try and figure out who the hell he is. It just brings that to a screeching halt.
Yeah, this movie has a bunch of... That's a good point. This movie has quite a few pacing issues, is I think the best way to call it.
Yeah. What I like about the pacing is it does feel different, especially for that time of the early 2000s, coming off of the late 90s and stuff. It was a whole different pacing and story or narrative style than a lot of the action movies around that time were. Mm-hmm. A lot of the action movies back then were just like breakneck speed, action everywhere, explosions, blah blah blah. This was a more deliberate, slowed down sort of international thriller that you were supposed to kind of go along with it at its own pace. That mm-hmm. worked a little bit. Other times it was like, okay, this does need to get going. Like, what are we doing here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This film is very, I know it sounds dumb following that up, but this film's really unique, I think, for some really good reasons and bad reasons. Like what you're saying with the breakneck pace at the time, I think this movie was definitely a breath of fresh air, but the beginning of the movie is so slow and so... It sets up so much, but in such a weird kind of clunky, heavy kind of way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and I think the movie really starts to pick up after he meets the female lead.
Marie, yeah.
Yeah, after Jason Bourne meets Marie outside of the bank or the embassy building, that's where the film really starts to pick up after that fight and he sees her outside.
Right. And that's even after one of the, like a small chase inside the consulate in Zurich. Mm-hmm. Which there's an interesting piece of trivia I read about that, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, once he meets her, once he meets his kind of co-star of the story as well, yeah, that's when things do sort of start to kick in. We get a little bit more from the CIA. Yeah, everything does the gears start spinning a little bit better. And
the CIA essentially are freaking out because Jason Bourne is like a hitman. He's an assassin. And he went rogue and then got shot and lost all of his memory. So they've lost a weapon out in the field, and that's why they're hunting him. They're like, we need to get him back because this is very dangerous, having this essentially wild dog running around with no with no check. So
yes,
that's why he's being hunted. What did you? Yep.
We come to find out that Jason Bourne belongs to a group of similar assassins like himself, who are basically out there waiting to be given a target. Their assets that basically are controlled by the CIA, and we meet a couple other assets within his group that are that are told to hunt him down. And,
yes.
With zero success on their part, obviously.
Yeah. And with a lot of that, as soon as they called the other assassins, I thought that sequence was kind of cool of all of them picking up their phones and then driving. I thought that was really cool and added a little bit of stakes to it, where it's like, oh, now it's not just the CIA looking for him, it's other people, and he doesn't realize that. So that added a little bit of the like cat and mouse thing, which I did like. But what did you think of Marie as a character in the movie?
Really underwritten, because this is the Matt Damon show. Really just a typical female character up till now too. There's a lot of female characters that are still underwritten and used just as a plot device for the male hero. But her in particular, I didn't dislike her, so I guess that's praise enough. But yeah, it was just kind of like, all right, this movie could happen without her character.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a bummer. Especially, this isn't like really spoilers, but especially for what happens in the beginning of the next movie. There's like something that happens involving her, and you're meant to feel something a lot more than what you've been given. And even in this, her character could be so interesting and so well written, but it just turns into her kind of complaining through the movie and being like, this is a bad idea, or I don't want to do this, or who are you, and all this other stuff, where this character could be really, really like deep, and they kind of make her a one-dimensional road bump for the entire film.
Oh yeah, a one-dimensional love interest that eventually turns into a love interest that doesn't feel earned.
No.
Because, I find it really hard to believe that Matt Damon, going through a literal identity crisis, trying to figure out who he is, would, care to, like, I'm going to take time out of my day to have a romantic, tiff with this random, woman of questionable descent. I don't know.
I think she's German.
German? Okay.
Based on the accent, I think she's German. Honestly, someone out there probably is going to be like, well, technically, she's from Luxembourg. I'm sorry if she's Danish or Swiss or German. Her accent, in my dumb American brain, sounds like a German accent. But yeah, I 100% agree with that. That the scene where they hook up in the hotel is so unearned and so jarring and weird for a guy who's essentially a robot hitman killer to then be like, yo, you don't have sex? Like, it doesn't feel like it's part of the narrative organically. I feel like that's a studio thing, or someone in the writer's room is like, yo, man, we need to have a love scene, so where can we fit this in?
Yeah, it's like, we can't just have this man and woman hanging out for 80 minutes and not have them have sex. Like that, it's like that was just an unquestionable thing. Like, wait, they have to hook up, or otherwise it would be weird.
And it's kind of that's one why I think we've moved past that, or hopefully we've moved past that in movies. Two, that felt like such a James Bond type moment, like where James Bond has like the female interest and they like hook up. Whereas like, okay, in that movie, there's a bunch of problematic stuff if you look at James Bond objectively. But this movie isn't James Bond, and he's not James Bond, and it was super weird, and then they don't address it the rest of the film, and you're like, what? That's weird that happened. And it's not like, it's kind of referenced, but not even.
Until the very end.
Yeah, until the last scene.
Right.
Which, yeah. So, this movie has the CIA, or the FBI, CIA, government bad guy in this movie, is the most laughably, I know the actor who plays this like this looks like this as a person, but his intentions and the way the film is positioned around him makes him the most like mustache twirling villain I've seen in a very long time. And I've watched Marvel movies recently.
Well, yeah, Chris Cooper, he is the he's typecast, I think, every single movie he's in as the villain or the bad guy of some sort.
Yeah.
And Brian Cox, like his one of the guys that he works with at the CIA, like is not far off. Like Brian Cox has had some like protagonist and like good guy roles.
I think the
like
only
Super
time,
Troopers.
the only time I've ever seen him as a good guy is in Super Troopers. He's William Stryker in X-Men.
Yes.
He's in Troy. He plays Agamemnon, I think.
Yeah, he is.
He's in these movies. Excuse me. He's in a bunch of stuff. He's an incredibly good actor. And then he's also the sheriff in Super Troopers, which I find so funny.
Yeah. But yes, I did get the same feeling about Chris Cooper's character. Just being like, you could spot his evilness from a mile away.
Oh yeah. That, and then I have a question. This is a question for the audience and for Ben. In this movie, there's a character who's this blonde female who sets up a computer station in Paris to help track Jason Bourne when he's on the run. They never introduce her. They don't really say why she's there. They're just giving her instructions, and there's weird cutaways to her. Do you know anything more about that character, or am I just being dumb?
Really, I don't think... at this point in the series, I don't think there was supposed to be much to know about her, other than she was just a kind of like a field agent that does this sort of comms work for them, played by Julia Stiles. And basically, that was like her kind of just her role was just to be there and be the kind of person that sets up the comms, which was kind of odd because Julia Stiles was like an established name at that point. You would think that she would be given more for this movie. Like she does do more as the series goes on.
You would think that her character and the person who plays Marie would be flipped.
Yes.
You would really think that, but maybe when they're writing the narrative, they were like, okay, this is a bigger name, let's have her through multiple films, where, spoiler, that other character may not be in more than 2 films. Spoiler alert. But, yeah, that was really weird. What did you also think of, I know we're going to go take a step back here, of the editing in the film, before we go more into like the narrative and like what is up?
The editing is perfectly serviceable until you get to hand-to-hand fighting scenes. Or really any of the action scenes.
Yes.
In this film. And then it becomes wretched.
Yes. There are some really interesting edits in here of Jason Bourne doing certain things. They're just interesting ways they cut it together. Okay. Ben is right. When they get in a car, when anything happens that is more tense and kind of a nail-biting moment, I don't know if the editor was like, let's see how experimental and weird we can make this, or they're like, okay, this is the style that I'm going for. Or they had a new intern on the film for just those scenes, because the editing does not match the rest of the film. It doesn't match any other fight scene ever, and it's just straight up kind of jarring and almost like, I don't know if the word cringeworthy is the right term for this, but it's really like grating.
What they do is, especially in the fight scenes, the hand-to-hand combat scenes, this is the film that I can't think of any other film like prior to this that sort of established the like ultra quick cut during fight scenes to make the fist swings, the kicks seem that much faster, but you never actually see them land. You'll see a swing of a fist, quick cut, the face or the head, whoever's getting punched already mid like swinging their head because they got punched. It's supposed to be quick. It's supposed to make everything look like, super fast kung fu martial arts stuff. But all it really is doing is just, it's confusing at many points. Because you're not getting a sense of which character is where in this fight.
Uh-huh.
It's just, it doesn't seem like there's any payoff for a punch landing or a kick landing or any sort of hit. And maybe this is me being spoiled by seeing a lot of movies with incredible fight choreography, like from overseas. But I expected more. And I particularly, I remember when I watched this the first time when I was younger, like thinking, I don't like how this is filmed.
Yes. I remember that more so from the second movie. We'll talk about that later. About, like, I don't like how something makes me uncomfortable, because I first saw these movies when I was, like, 10. So, we'll get into that. But I agree, and I think watching a fight scene like any of the ones in this film, whether it be the fight scene in Zurich, the fight scene in the apartment in Paris, or there's one in a hotel at the end that uses a flight of stairs, which I think there's a really goofy scene in there.
God, yeah.
There's one that I was like, what is this? But whether it be any of those, I think if you watch, there's a hallway fight scene from the TV show Daredevil on Netflix that you can look up online. That does a intense, brutal, like really visceral fight scene so much better than any fight scene in any of these movies, and it does it all in one shot. So they don't cut. The whole scene is filmed in one long take, almost like a play. So it really forces you to keep watching because there's no break. This film, or shaky cam film, I think is really, really useful in small doses, but I think used in larger doses, it shows lazy filmmaking. Yes. Or at least lazy fight choreography. And that quick cut, I understand what it can be used, like, if you use it once in a film for a few seconds, people can get this idea of like, oh, something's different. But if you use it through entire sequences, it's just like, okay, it gets boring to watch. Like, you're not engaged the same way.
Exactly.
And not to get into it too much on this episode, because we'll get into it more in future episodes, Ben and myself and someone else are writing a film. And when writing, these are things that you should think about, just for anyone who's writing anything. It's just like, what is it going to look like on screen? And I feel like when they wrote this movie, those scenes just written were like, punch, cut, punch, kick, spin around, punch. It's like, there's nothing descriptive in there, and they're not even memorable fights. Like, I couldn't tell you what happens first, second, third, in like the order of operations in that like micro narrative.
Right. I actually, and yeah, I guess I have to skip to near the end. I appreciated Matt Damon and Clive Owen's last sort of interaction that much more, because it wasn't this big jumbling mess of editing and quick cuts. It was boom, boom, boom. This is over. There is no like hand-to-hand fight. Yeah,
I think in a weird way, stylistically, it stood out so much more because they didn't use any of that. And maybe that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to... It's like you make everything really, really, really dark on a piece of paper so you can see the highlight. So you make everything else bad so you can see what the normal thing would look like. And comparatively speaking, it's so good. But yeah, I agree. So I guess we'll jump back to the narrative and then get into detail about what we were talking about with the Clive Owen scene. So Jason Bourne realizes that he's Jason Bourne. Essentially, he realizes he's an assassin throughout the film. He has to go to Paris to try to track down himself, like his identity. He gets stalked in Paris, and like one of the hitmen comes to get him. They knock the hitman out the window onto the street. Then the CIA, FBI, U.S. agency figures out where he is, and then the chase ensues, essentially. And then from there, it's kind of just like they go through the countryside, and then they end up at this house.
Yes, that's like an old friend of Marie's.
Was this like her like ex-boyfriend, do you think?
I think it was like an old relationship of hers.
Okay. And that actor and her, the chemistry in that entire scene felt like, I don't know what it was, but it wasn't good.
It was a bit, forced, a lot of it. And thankfully their interactions didn't last that long.
Yeah.
Because that whole scene is pretty quick. It plays pretty quickly. From them getting there, a few minutes later, confrontation with Clive Owen.
Yeah, which is actually really cool. That sniper battle is really quite cool because Jason Bourne and Clive Owen are both like hitmen, and they're kind of outsmarting each other, and it is a cool sequence. But I think that might be the highlight of all of this, and the way I would describe this film to someone, maybe you can agree with this, maybe not. This film is like wearing really, really comfy shoes, except there's a small rock in your shoe. Where it's like, oh, this is good, but there's something making me kind of uncomfortable and not really being able to fully enjoy the experience 100%.
I'd say that's pretty accurate. Like, for me, I wanted to like this movie, I think more so because of knowing that it is a pretty universally praised film up to this point as well. Like, I wanted to enjoy it, like, watching it now and saying, like, okay, it still holds up, or it always did, or always was good. And I just felt myself really bored throughout most of it.
Yeah, it's just like, and this isn't just because we've gotten movies like Mission Impossible Fallout.
Oh,
like,
yes, of course not.
That has nothing to do with that. But this film also came out around the same time as James Bond Diamond Face, or Die Another Day, which is also a horrendous film, but it's horrendous for a different reason. It's more like coherent. This film kind of feels like there's 4 different films in here that they wrote around the same time, or it's like 4 different episodes of a TV show that you jammed into one movie, is kind of what this movie feels like.
Right, and I think a big thing was Doug Liman's approach to the film, and his intent was to make it a more grounded, realistic, like spy thriller, minus the kind of bombastic parts that you would see in in a James Bond film. And in a way, I commend him for trying to take that approach, but I think he went a little bit too realistic in the sense that, like, yes, things would be incredibly slow paced, like in real life. You know, it's okay to pepper in the kind of a little bit of craziness every now and then, except for when it's Matt Damon riding a body down a stairwell. So fucking dumb.
Okay, so we'll get to that before we'll get to my other point. There's a scene at the end of the movie where Matt Damon, Jason Bourne, is kind of cornered in this apartment complex or hotel in Paris where he's like hunting down answers, and he like encounters the main bad guy. Like an alarm is called, so a bunch of agents come in. There's like a hallway fight scene, and that's pretty successful as a fight scene, just like kind of Jesus Christ, moving through a hallway, taking people out. But then there's, I think, 2 guys at the bottom of this long flight of stairs in this old building in Paris, so you can see down the flight of stairs, almost like if you've seen American Psycho. There's a similar-ish sort of scene where you can see all the way down and someone can look up and see you. It's one of those. So Jason Bourne, being the expert hitman assassin that he is, thinks it's the best idea to take a dead body that he just killed, runs it through the banister, and rides the body like a surfboard through the flights of stairs, shoots people on the way down, and then lands and is able to get up.
And this is like a good 10, 12 stories.
Oh, yeah.
That he goes down. Like 10 to 12 flights of stairs. So, like, and they actually show the quick cut, like, the impact of the body he's riding hit the floor, and he, like, rolls off or flies off.
And the body, like, smushes.
Well, the body doesn't do anything. That's the thing. Like, in real life, that body would pretty much explode into a viscera of gore.
Yeah.
But, like, understandably, it's a PG-13 movie. You can't have that. But still, it's just like, just don't show it.
Yeah, there's like a bit.
Have him ride that body down.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
There's a bit of like a smush kind of thing, but yeah, that body would turn into a pancake.
Yeah.
And
Matt Damon would probably be dead too.
Oh, he'd 100% be dead. I think the one cool redeemable thing from this scene is near the beginning, Matt Damon has 2 guns and he flips one upside down and shoots it with his pinky upside down. That's kind of cool. Like, I saw that, I was like...
They made it look cool.
Yeah, like he shot someone, so one hand, the gun is pointing the right way up, so like if you're making finger guns. The other one is if you use your pinky as the finger gun, and he has like one normal, one upside down. I was like, okay, that's super cool. But I think that's the only redeemable moment from this entire fight scene. And then after that, the film kind of ends. Like, the bad guy gets killed very anticlimactically. Not by Matt Damon.
Right. it ends up that Chris Cooper, he gets out of the apartment building, and then he is taken out by another assassin within this group that he was leading, but he got double-crossed by Brian Cox's character, who was like, all right, Chris Cooper is screwed up enough. We need to get him out of this picture.
Yeah.
Take him out.
Yeah, pretty much. Also, if anyone listening out there is like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, you're right.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't make sense. We're trying to make the most coherent version of this possible, and it's really hard. And then the film ends, so after that, after our bad guy gets killed, it kind of just ends, and then we're sort of teleported to the south of France, maybe?
So it's some beach community where Marie has now been relocated to at a scooter rental shop.
Yeah, because Matt Damon or Jason Bourne gave her some money that he had in his name to escape and get out of the situation. You have one chance to leave. So she leaves the situation. And then she buys a scooter shop in the south of France or maybe in Greece or something, which is whatever. And then Matt Damon shows up and it's this weird romantic-y kind of scene, and then it ends.
Mm-hmm.
And I legitimately, after the credits started, I was waiting for a post-credit scene, and I know that wasn't really a thing in 2002, but I was like, there has to be more. You can't end this really gritty, down-to-earth spy action thriller thing with this weird romantic honeymoon scene. It was so tonally out of place and so unearned that I was like, that can't be how you end this movie. But it is.
But it was.
And on our rating scale, I'm gonna give this 1 meh. That's our rating for the Bourne movie. It's 1 meh.
Pretty much, yeah. It doesn't, at least for me, it's not as good as what I thought it was, while still being certainly not the worst thing I've ever fucking seen.
No, it was not the worst thing. This movie is better than all 3 of the Matrix movies. No, it's better than the second 2 Matrix movies.
I was going to say, whoa.
It's not better than the first. It is better than the second 2 Matrix movies. By a lot.
Agreed.
So if we had to rank the movies that we've officially talked about in this series of just breaking down movies, because the Harry Potter, the series we're not going to do because that's 10 movies each. Right. But the individual kind of things, it would be the first Matrix was probably the best one we've watched so far. That isn't Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, or BlacKkKlansman. But out of these kind of retro reviews, it's the original Matrix, this Bourne, and then the other 2 Matrix movies. And spoiler alert, the other 2 Bourne movies might be better than those 2 Matrix movies. Maybe not.
Yeah. You'll just have to keep listening and find out.
Yeah, Ben, out of 10, what would you give this on a 10-point scale?
A 7.
I was going to say a 6.4, but I'll go with a gentleman's 7 on this.
Yeah, we're a C-7.
Yeah. This movie is definitely a C- because you can show this to a friend and let's say you just have some friends over and you guys kind of run out of stuff to do. This movie is something that you can just sit down with your friends who might be movie fans. You're like, you want to watch something kind of weird that maybe you've seen? And you all watch, you're like, what the hell was that? And you're like, right? It was weird. And I think that's kind of what this film is for. It's almost like a novelty now. And sort of look how far we've come in action movies.
Yeah. And really, this was the launch point. Matt Damon was around before this. He had his movies. He was, I would say he was a household name. The Bourne series is where this shot him into the stratosphere.
Yeah, because he did Good Will Hunting, so people knew him as the sad kid from Good Will Hunting.
And Dogma.
And Dogma. Yeah, so he was in stuff, so people knew the name, but it was kind of the artsy sort of really, really actor-y actor. Him and Ben Affleck for writing.
Right, because that's a hell of a way to get into the industry. Is just the first thing you really do is you get an Oscar for writing.
Yeah. Also, if you rewatch that Oscar speech, they thank Harvey Weinstein because it was a Weinstein film. That's really weird. Don't go back and watch old Oscar speeches. They will mess you up.
We cannot say whether they did or did not know about what was going on before that, but we'll just leave it at that.
I was also, on that note of never go back to watch old stuff, I was watching the old Austin Powers films because they were on my like DirecTV, hey, we just put these on there list of stuff. There is one picture, I will re-pull it up. I think I actually texted it just to Ben. But I didn't remember this, but in the beginning of Goldmember, they do a fake version of Austin Powers where it's Gwyneth Paltrow, Danny DeVito plays Mini-Me, Tom Cruise plays Austin Powers, Steven Spielberg is directing it, and Kevin Spacey's playing Dr. Evil. And just the Kevin Spacey as Dr. Evil, it's just like, that's life imitating art right there. And I saw that, and it's one of those, like, when you see someone who's a bad guy in real life play a bad guy, you're like, oh, wow, you're a bad person. But yeah, that kind of just had that same sort of impact where you watch, like, an old Oscar speech, you're like, oh, wow, that's horrible. But you are right about the Matt Damon thing with this boosting way into the, like, everyone knows Matt Damon. Like, even in Team America, that's like a ongoing gag in that entire film is Matt Damon.
Yeah, and I just looked it up. He had been in like 5 or 6 films before this, like major films. Where are we at here? Yeah, 2002 he did Bourne Identity, but before that, let's see, Ocean's 11. You know, so that probably lifted him up pretty big. Finding Forrester, Legend of Bagger Vance, Talented Mr. Ripley, Saving Private Ryan. Being Private Ryan.
Oh, that was before this, yeah.
Yeah, that was back in 98, so a good 4 years before that. But yeah, so he had an established career up to that. But yeah, it was like the Bourne stuff that made him a movie star.
Yeah. I totally forgot that Saving Private Ryan was before this. I guess in my mind, I always thought this was older than Saving Private Ryan. But damn, yeah, that's a pretty good filmography for someone that young and still someone today. Like, if those are the only films he'd ever done, he'd still be a star.
Oh, yeah.
But I was thinking, as another series, would you want to do the Ocean series? Starting with the original Ocean's movie.
Going way back to, like, Sinatra.
Yeah, that movie's incredibly problematic. I watched it recently. That's why I would want to watch it again. There's some very weird problematic stuff in that film where you're like, huh. I need to talk about this in a public forum. But yeah, so on the whole, this movie, C grade, 7-ish out of 10.
Yeah, agreed.
Definitely not the worst, definitely not the best. To spoil what our next rating will be, in general, we're not going to say anything about the next film. Do you think this film is better than the next one, or do you think the next one is better than this?
I think the next one is better.
The next one is better. The better parts get better, but the worst parts get worse.
Yes. Yeah, that's an accurate description.
Yeah. So if you like this movie and you watch the first Bourne movie, and you're like, you know what? I could watch another one of these. I really like the good stuff. Watch the next one. But just know the things that may irritate you that irritated us about this film will really irritate you in the next one.
Yes.
And there's 1 or 2 characters in particular in the next one that I'm like, why? This is a useless character. But that's something for next week. But, Ben, do you have any other thoughts on this film?
Nothing profound or anything to say about it. I think we've said that what needs to be said.
Yeah, Ben, before we go, how's your spring break? Ben's on spring break from Purdue.
Pretty uneventful. I guess I got a new tattoo at the beginning of the week.
Yeah. Where's that?
It's kind of hard to... let me turn the camera around. Bad audio, bad radio, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'll send you a proper picture.
Yeah.
You can post the...
I will.
Post it on whatever whatchamacallits. But other than that, yeah, and also I have booked I'm going on a Euro trip.
Yeah.
In the fall, I've booked a flight to Amsterdam in October, so we're gonna do that.
That we'll have to plan out an episode, the Ben pre-Amsterdam, and then Ben post-Amsterdam. I'm not gonna say too much, but if you guys know anything about Amsterdam, you know what I'm talking about. Amsterdam is just a wild place where wild place things happen. I had 2 friends who went to Amsterdam, and they said it was maybe the craziest experience of their lives. And they didn't even go looking for anything. It went to find them.
That's what I anticipate.
Yeah, and we are not talking about prostitution in any way, shape, or form, if that's where people's minds were going, because this is on the internet.
Yeah, I have no intention of partaking in that either anyway. So
yeah. That would be 2 of my buddies went, and they told me some stories from it, and they were being 100% like, they were not lying. Like they had nothing to gain to lie to me about that, and they're like, no, this is like legit what went down. And I'm like, what? How? Just how does this happen to like people? And they're like, dude, we don't know. We were just sitting in a restaurant, and these crazy shenanigans started happening. And I'm like, dude, that's wild. But how are you staying there, Ben? Are you going to hotel it up? Are you going to hostel it up? Or
most likely a hostel.
Nice.
Because it's significantly cheaper to do it that way.
Yeah. Are you flying straight into the Netherlands?
I have one stop between Indianapolis and there. I'll have a layover in Detroit for a couple hours. But then from there, it's straight to Amsterdam.
Really? So you're flying from Indy to Detroit, which is like a 40-minute flight.
Yeah, like hour tops.
And then, how long is your layover in Detroit?
2 hours, 2 hours, 30 minutes maybe.
Oh, that's not even that bad.
Not terrible, yeah.
And then
from there, it's like a 8 or 9 hour flight.
That's not that bad.
Yeah, and it's going to be overnight as well.
Oh, okay. So, damn, that's exciting. I am super stoked for you for that, because that's going to be a wild, wild experience. Do you have anything you want to go do while you're over there? Like,
I want to get a lot of photography done there, because there's some beautiful villages, like old architecture. I want to do a lot of that. Some city photography as well. Other than that, really, it's just kind of like, I don't really. I'm gonna try not to have a big like itinerary for myself. I just want to kind of experience it as it comes.
I think that can be really fun for a trip like that, especially like maybe having like 2 or 3 restaurants. Like, oh, I want to try this place and this place. And like one each day, so you have a thing, so it forces you to go out and explore to find that restaurant. I know one of my buddies had that as a thing when he went to go travel places. He like found like 3 restaurants in 3 different parts of the city for one each day, so he had to get there, and then when he's in that part of the city, he can go see other stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's actually super cool. And you're doing it over fall break?
Yes. The fall break for Purdue is like Monday and Tuesday of that week that it starts, and then I'm just gonna take the last 3 days of that week just for myself. Yeah,
I mean, I would too. Especially if I had that flight booked, I would be like on top of the world. I'd be counting down the days.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a long 6 months to wait.
Yeah, but that's really cool. Are you going to practice any like foreign language speaking, or are you going to
I'm going to try and brush up. I'm going to try and brush up on my Dutch.
Yeah.
I'm taking a German class right now, so there's going to be a lot of similarities, but I do want to try and get the correct pronunciation and like intonation of all that stuff down, so I don't look like a complete fucking tourist.
Yeah. I took German all through high school, so if I did Dutch, there's probably a bunch I could remember. But the key thing that I learned when I was down in Mexico as well for a bit, and when I've been to Europe and stuff, is the mentality of a lot of other countries rather than the U.S. is to be able to speak your language better than you can speak theirs.
Okay.
So they will speak English better than you can speak what they're speaking, which I find very interesting.
That is. And yeah, I've read that like 99% of the people in Amsterdam do speak English, so that's not going to be like any problem at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy with soft power, and we're not going to get into a political conversation here, but how many places you can go to in the world, and if you speak English, you will probably be able to find your way to at least an embassy.
Right.
If you speak English and just have a vague understanding of other cultures and how to be polite, you can get almost anywhere. Which is wild to think about.
It is.
But yeah, so that's a definite... That's something to unpack for a different episode that I don't want to unpack, because there's a lot that goes along with what that was. But Ben, do you have anything else before we wrap up?
I think I want to plug a show. Since we did this last week, I plug in some stuff that we recommend. I want to plug on True TV a show called I'm Sorry. It's a comedy. It's a half-hour comedy that I just discovered this past week, starring Andrea Savage, a very funny comedian. Mm-hmm. This show is wildly hilarious. It is. I would say it's like Curb Your Enthusiasm with a female lead.
Ooh,
it's very, very funny. Yeah, you can find it on Hulu if you subscribe to Hulu, or if you have cable, it's on True TV. Season 2 is just ending. I want to say tonight. Tonight we are taping. So yeah, I'm gonna be. I'm about halfway through season 1, so I've been powering through it, but it is a very, very funny show. I
will have to get in on that. What I'm going to plug this week, I'm going to plug a show that the second season, I think, is coming out next week. It is a cable show, or it's an HBO show. It's not Game of Thrones, guys. We'll get to Game of Thrones, don't worry. Hold your horses, literally. I'm going to plug Barry. Barry is a show with Bill Hader as the lead. And he plays a hitman who moves to Los Angeles, who learns that maybe he wants to become an actor. And maybe that's his real calling in life. It is what you would call a dark comedy. A very dark comedy. There are some episodes that are funnier than others. There are some sequences that are much funnier than others. And there's some things in this show that leave you with your jaw on the floor. One of the supporting characters in the show, I have to find his name, and I'll keep talking until I find it. It might be one of the funniest comedic performances I've seen in a very, very long time. And I'm not talking about our boy Henry Winkler, who's in the show, who plays.
Are you talking about NoHo Hank?
I'm talking about NoHo Hank. What's that guy's name?
His name is Anthony Carrigan.
Anthony Carrigan. So Anthony Carrigan plays a mafia, like a Chechnyan mobster, but he thinks Barry is his best friend. And it might be some of the funniest, like, dialogue ever. And he's so casual and so happy being him. There's a line where there's a character tied up on the floor, and people are arguing. And it's like, so what are you going to do to me now? And one of the mobsters is like, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, we'll kill you. And he's like, oh, I guess we're going to kill you now. And then it's like, oh, we have to mail him the bullet. It's like, what are you doing? Why are we mailing him a bullet? It's funny, man. Let it happen. And he's just such a casual, calm character. It is comedy gold when he is on screen. He steals every scene he's in.
Yes. Yeah, I 100% endorse this plug as well. This show is so good.
It is.
It's hilarious. It is. The dramatic scenes are fucking incredible. Mm-hmm. Like, this put, for me, it was incredible to see Bill Hader, like, act in a dramatic way like that he does, and not just be like, a hilarious person like everyone knows he is. Like, the dude puts on some acting chops in this show, and it's incredible to watch.
And Bill Hader is never the funny one in the show. Which is
really not, yeah.
There's a few things he does that are funny, but the comedic stuff happens around him. He's actually usually the straight man in the scene, which I think is really cool. Because as the season goes on, the plot gets darker. And there's a scene in one of the last seasons in a car where Bill Hader just does something, and it just, boom, it goes off the rails, and from that point on, he kind of is a loose cannon, and throughout the entire rest of the show, you think like, okay, Bill Hader's this one way, maybe he's irredeemable. Then by the end of the show, you're like, oh, maybe he's a good guy again. Then he does something else, and you're like, whoa. And then the final line of the season is so good. He's like, starting now. And I think season 2 is going to pick up instantly after season 1.
I hope it does.
Like the same scene, like it just picks up.
There's consequences that, like, immediate consequences that need to be like fleshed out. Yeah,
and I'm so excited, Barry. And then the show you're watching is I'm Sorry.
Yes, I'm Sorry.
I'm Sorry on True TV. I will link those just as last week. I will put those in there. 100% recommendation for both of those if you're looking for something else to occupy some of your time. So, I'm Russell. I'm signing out for See What Sticks, guys. We have a website. We have all that fun stuff. It's always linked in the description. I'm signing out. Ben, close us out.
As always, thank you guys so much for listening. We hope to catch you here again next week. This has been See What Sticks, a podcast about everything and nothing. I am Ben. Have a good night, everybody.